Let us pray. Almighty God, your word reminds us that for everything there is a season, and a time for everything under heaven. A time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. As we gather on this Sunday morning of Spirit Week, we do so to celebrate the contributions of distinguished faculty, athletes, and alumni. But we also gather to grieve the loss of close friends, classmates, and mentors. Today our hearts are filled with joy as we remember the days of old and hope of what can still be. But those same hearts also carry the sorrow of what has been lost and live only now in your presence and in our memories. Still, as there is a season for all things, we know that you are present in all things, that your love and comfort and guidance are nearer to us than our own breath. that your grace is imminent and intimately known during days of both praise and lament. And so we welcome your presence among us this day and ask that your name be blessed in our celebration and that you would strengthen us in our remembrance. This we ask as we reflect upon your provision over the life of this school these 129 years, and for the sake of your name. Amen.
Amen and good morning. I am Chris Angel, and I am honored to be serving my alma mater as the 10th head of Baylor. And on behalf of our students, faculty, and staff, I welcome you to the Alumni Chapel this morning. I'm so excited that we are able to gather together in person this year for such an important service. And I'm grateful for your effort in being with us this morning. This gathering, for me, is the perfect capstone to conclude our alumni weekend. And I look forward to honoring our recipients today, as well as celebrating over brunch in the Gary Dining Hall following this service. This year does mark the 129th year in our proud history at Baylor. Today we are gathered to recognize the true excellence in the lives of many who have exhibited excellence in their careers, true loyalty to our school, and those who have achieved success athletically while representing Baylor in the world. Our founding headmaster, Dr. John Roy Baylor, implored our students to live their lives with magnanimitas, meaning greatness of spirit. And I believe the individuals that we are honoring today are shining examples set forth by the mere desire to strive for excellence throughout their careers. Today, we are also gathered to recognize and pay tribute to those no longer with us. Esteemed faculty, staff, friends, coaches, and classmates who we once shared time with on this magical hill. To begin, it is my pleasure to welcome William Montgomery, Dean of Faculty and fellow alumnus of the class of 92, to begin with our awards.
Good morning, everyone. I'm William Montgomery, and I serve as the Dean of Faculty. I've said it in many settings, and I will say it again today, that teaching at Baylor is a humbling experience. I say that because one cannot but be humbled when comparing oneself against the excellence and accomplishments of so many of our faculty. And the group of folks we're here to recognize today is an exemplar of that excellence. It's my pleasure and privilege to present the Dedicated Faculty Service Award to 6 retired members of the Baylor faculty who have inspired me and countless others to grow as teachers in the classroom, as servants of the school, and as mentors to young people. They've also served as living examples of dedication, professionalism, and most importantly, magnanimitas. Baylor has had the good fortune of having so many talented and loyal folks serve the school over the years, and serving the school demands many qualities: a knowledge of subject matter, an impressive versatility, a desire to continue to grow as an educator, but the most important quality, and the one our honorees today possess in abundance, is a commitment to the care and growth of the young people in their charge. The average Baylor faculty member has had 17 years of experience working with young people. The average Baylor faculty member has been at Baylor alone for 11 years. Between them, today's awardees fostered in Baylor students the ability and the desire to make a positive difference in the world for a collective total of 215 years. To consider their contributions cannot but inspire both humility and gratitude. And though they are moving on from Baylor, we can take heart that their influence will last for years to come. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to speak today for Floyd Selipino, David Conwell, Bob Olson, Tom Schau, Bill McMahon, and Carl Owens. Floyd Selipino found his way to Baylor in the fall of 1978 and served the school for 42 years. You can read in your program about Floyd's many and impressive accomplishments, from performing in an exemplary fashion while at Penn State, to developing a personal relationship with the Vatican, to earning grants from the Lyndhurst and Rockefeller Foundations, to helping institute the AP program at Baylor, to garnering recognition with both the Conroe Miller Award and the Ireland Chair for Distinguished Teaching, to serving as the Dean of Faculty, to serving as the Director of Studies, a role in which he pretty much single-handedly organized the school's entire teaching schedule every single year. But I think that focusing on these accomplishments ends up missing Floyd's actual impact at Baylor. I'm fortunate today to be able to speak from personal experience, both as a former student of our honorees and also as a colleague. And I know that it will resonate with anyone who knows Floyd to say that perhaps more than any other person at Baylor, Floyd understood the importance and the power of simply spending time with people. Yes, Floyd is the most well-read human on the planet. Yes, his sense of humor is perhaps the most wicked and irreverent that you'll ever encounter. And yes, he can throw a piece of chalk, or these days a dry erase marker, from across the room and land it on the whiteboard tray like nobody's business. But more importantly, Floyd had a way of making everyone he spoke to in a given day, and it was many, feel like that conversation was the most important thing on his schedule. Like they were the only person that he'd hoped to see. Baylor kids were students of Floyd, but Floyd was a student of kids. And he cared about, and he still does care about, and remember every single one that he taught. And I can guarantee you that every single one of them also remembers Floyd Selipino and cares about him. So please join me in honoring Floyd Selipino with the Dedicated Faculty Service Award.
Just quickly, to the people with whom I worked at this wonderful place, all I want to say is thanks for the memories. They're greatly appreciated. Ciao, ciao.
David Conwell found his way to Baylor in the fall of 1995 and served the school for 25 years. The list of his accomplishments before he arrived at Baylor is particularly impressive, from being a valedictorian of his high school, to being a fellow at Penn, to earning his PhD, to writing a book, to working digs all over Cyprus as an archaeologist in the field. At Baylor, his list of accomplishments is even more impressive, from teaching in 2 departments, the World Language Department, he speaks, by the way, or reads 6 languages, and the History Department, to coaching a sport, to earning recognition for excellence in teaching as an Ireland Chair, to sponsoring the Model United Nations Club, to pioneering and developing the school's Civic Scholars Program, to serving as the chair of the History Department. It's an impressive list, but again, none of it really is the essence of David Conwell. You see, when contemplating one's colleagues at Baylor, contained in each is a unique lesson in what it means to be human. To that end, one cannot encounter David Conwell and not learn both what it means to do things with great care and to be humble in accomplishing great things. I imagine that most folks, including many who know him well, didn't know most of David's accomplishments. That's not because we don't care about him, mind you. It's because David never talks about them. He's so humble, in fact, that it's quite possible he's forgotten about them himself. David's singular focus, you see, was never on what he had done. It was only on ever what he could do, and in particular, what he could do to help you. David never wanted the focus to be on him. He only ever wanted to ignite in others the same feeling of awe that he has at the wonders of the world around him. David is the consummate exemplar of the philosopher who points at the moon without drawing any attention to his finger. David couldn't be with us today, but he's tuning in from his new home in Maine. So please join me just for a moment, because I know all this hoopla is no doubt making him feel very uncomfortable, in honoring David Conwell with the Dedicated Faculty Service Award. Bob Olson found his way to Baylor in the fall of 1990, and he served the school for 30 years. It didn't take long once he'd arrived for Bob to distinguish himself both to his students and among his colleagues. After a mere 5 years at Baylor, Bob became the history department chair and set to work encouraging the department to broaden the courses that it offered and shift the curriculum to focus as much on the skills of being a historian as it did on the knowledge that historians have. Bob calls himself a generalist, and that's certainly true. His own interests range from an extensive knowledge of the Three Stooges to a mastery of Morse code to operating his own ham radio station out of his classroom to everything one needs to know about the care and husbandry of rabbits, to building his antenna for his radio on the roof of Lupton Annex, to teaching not only a wide array of history courses, but also teaching astronomy, to building his own telescope to teach astronomy. I think the best two exemplars of Bob's impact on Baylor students, though, came in the form of the tributes that they've paid to him. As you may have garnered from his interests, Bob pretty much knows everything. And even if he doesn't, his students sure think he does. One year, in fact, Probasco Dorm's Baylor Macaulay skit depicted a Jeopardy-style showdown between a Macaulay quiz team and a Baylor quiz team. In the skit, the Baylor team wheeled out what would be the only participant on their team. It was a massive book, and the book was clearly labeled Bob Olson's Brain. Bob has also been recognized in countless senior speeches. Baylor offers each senior the opportunity to address the school in the form of a senior speech, focusing on a topic important to them. The senior speeches are delivered on Fridays during assembly, and one of the essential components of a good speech is a reference to, a shout out if you will, a member of Baylor's faculty and staff who has been influential to the speaker in their time at Baylor. If you were betting on who might get a shout out on any given Friday, your safest bet was Bob Olson. He routinely got more mentions in senior speeches than anyone else. So if fellow historian David Conwell pointed to the moon, students thought Bob Olson was the one who'd hung it. And I guess that's only fitting for someone who also taught astronomy. Well, Bob couldn't be with us today, but he's watching as well from home. So please join me in honoring Bob Olson with the Dedicated Faculty Service Award. Tom Schau found his way to Baylor in 1986, and he served the school for 34 years. And man, what a 34 years that was. Biblical scholars often focus on the first chapter of Genesis' depiction of what they call creation ex nihilo, creation from nothing. Don't get me wrong, Tom would not likely, or he would likely scold me for making a comparison between him and the good Lord, and I don't intend to put Tom on such a high pedestal. Nevertheless, though, Tom is someone who knows what it means to create something, in this case an instrumental music program, from nothing. And the list of things that Tom called into being and then piloted on to success is stunning. From a band, to a jazz band, to a pep band, to a separate orchestra program in both the upper and middle schools, to an instrumental music building, to tours for his musicians across 11 cities and 3 countries. Tom was also sure to bring accomplished composers and performers to campus each year to work with his students. Finally, Tom also helped the theater department introduce the spring musical to Baylor, and to boot, he served as the director of the pit orchestra for each production. The instrumental music world that Tom built here at Baylor became so robust that when he retired, we had to bring in 2 people to replace him. No lie. Never mind the fact that Tom did all this while also serving both as the dorm parent and as an officer in the United States Army through 3 separate deployments. What's most amazing to me is that Tom did all these things without showing even 1 ounce of stress. His gait was always confident, his gaze was always sure, and the twinkle in his eye and the rakish grin on his lips never left him. No matter what pandemonium of performance or swirl in his schedule was going on, Tom's jaunty reply to anyone who asked how he was doing was always, "Outstanding." To our students, Tom wasn't just the architect of Baylor's instrumental music, he was instrumental music. In him, students saw what it meant to give one's life to the pursuit of a passion, and countless Baylor students have taken with them both the skill and the desire to go on making music because of Tom Schau. So once again, I'm sorry that Tom couldn't be with us today, but he is watching from home. So please join me in honoring Tom Schau with the Dedicated Faculty Service Award. Bill McMahon is here. I'm looking at him right now. Bill McMahon graduated from Baylor in 1967, and then he found his way back in 1974. He went on to serve the school for 47 years with a career that was, to be honest, too storied to even pretend that my brief remarks today can do them all justice. As you'll note in your program, in his time at Baylor, Bill was a history teacher, a wellness teacher, and a PE instructor. He was also a coach like no other, giving his time over the years to JV football, to middle school basketball, to varsity track, varsity football, middle school wrestling, and middle school track. He served as a coach at every level that one can, from assistant to head coach, and he ended his time at Baylor serving as the middle school athletic director. With all our honorees today, though, none of those titles, nor any of those positions, really gets at the impact of Bill McMahon. Bill coached sports, yes, and he coached them to great success, leading various teams to 9 state titles, 2 state runner-up recognitions, and 20 region titles. So yes, Bill coached sports. But I think that if you speak to anyone who served on Bill's team, they'll attest to the fact that more than sports, Bill coached athletes. I saw this firsthand when my own son entered the 6th grade, and as his PE coach, Bill saw Lake, saw where he had potential, saw where he had love, and encouraged him to go to those places where those two things intersected. I'd encourage anyone in this room to go to a Baylor class reunion with Bill and watch what happens once he sets foot in the door. You'll think you've gone to dinner with the mayor, and what's truly amazing is that for all the attention the alumni will try to give Bill, he'll find a way to turn it right back on them, remembering every name, every sport, and every accomplishment of every athlete. And while he pays so much attention to the individual, Bill coaches his athletes to find their greatest joy, not in individual accomplishments, but in teamwork. Bill's message of serving the team over self, or as he puts it, it's not about me, it's about the B, always shines through. I don't think it's any coincidence that both Baylor and Bill start with B. And so for many, the school and the man are one and the same. Please join me in honoring Bill McMahon with the dedicated Faculty Service Award.
You'll have to excuse my voice. I think I lost it after yelling to so many people over 47 years. But it was a great ride for me, and I was very fortunate to be able to come here and work. And I'm so grateful to so many people. But really, the people that were always behind the scenes were my family, or is my family. And you know, unless you coach, you don't really realize how many hours are spent away from your home and your family. And there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of those hours. So I'm so grateful to my family. Again, thank you so much.
Carl Owens graduated from Baylor in 1974 and found his way back in 1985. He served the school for 37 years. While most Baylor faculty dedicate their lives to the study and teaching of a single subject, Carl Owens dedicated his professional career at Baylor to the study of all subjects. Serving as the school's reference librarian, Carl's professional life was spent around volumes and volumes of information. And it doesn't take much time spent in Carl's presence or in asking Carl a question about pretty much anything to find out that he has absorbed most of the library's collection. Carl devoted unflagging work in the library, creating its first website, constructing its citation generator, building its information gateway, teaching research skills to class after class after class, and generating resource guides, both for pretty much every class we have, as well as for any number of classes that we might one day have. Those kids from Probasco, those kids from Probasco and their Baylor Macaulay skit that I mentioned earlier, who have been just, or would have been just as well served to label their massive book of knowledge as Carl Owens' brain. In fact, put Bob Olson and Carl Owens together and IBM's Watson supercomputer starts to look more like a speak and spell. One could be forgiven for attributing Carl's prodigious assemblage of pursuit of information to purely intellectual motives. But in so doing, I think you'd miss the best part of Carl, because for as impressive as is the head of Carl Owens, that head is ruled by an even bigger heart. And you should never mistake that when talking to him. For Carl, he understands every instance of someone coming to him for information as an opportunity to build community and connection. The structure that he'll build may be made of knowledge, but its frame is pure connection. Carl sees knowing things as a better way to know people, and for Carl, the best way of sharing information is that sharing part. I have suspect that Carl got into libraries not to hide from people, but because he knew that libraries are where people go. And at Baylor, one never really went to the library to find a book. One went to the library to find Carl. And in finding Carl, you knew you'd be both taken care of and well cared for. So please join me in honoring Carl Owens with the Dedicated Faculty Service Award.
It's truly an honor for me to be here today honoring these Baylor legends. I had the privilege of being a part of the Baylor community as a student and as a faculty member with all of our honorees this morning, and it is humbling for me to be here hearing about all of their accomplishments, because that is what we're all about at Baylor. Dedicated faculty, giving of themselves each and every day for the betterment of all of our students. And that's what's been so rewarding, to listen to this morning, to reconnect with so many of my former teachers at Baylor and so many of my former students over the course of this past week and weekend, including many reunions last night, seeing so many former students, being able to interact with them and those who attended Baylor before I did. We all share in the knowledge and the experience that at Baylor, it really does just mean more. There's something special about this place that leads our faculty members and staff and students to just develop experiences that go way beyond the norm. So it's my honor to continue with our service awards today, and I'll begin with our Hall of Fame inductees. First, our Sports Hall of Fame inductees. I'll begin with Bill Anderson, class of 1971. In any discussion about distance running at Baylor, it seems that one name will forever be mentioned early in the conversation. It is not an overstatement to call Bill Anderson the athlete that has laid the foundation for the tradition of excellence in distance running that Baylor has been known for in the decades since his graduation. A great cross-country runner, Anderson set numerous course records, including the Macaulay course as a sophomore, was a Mid-South champion with a course record at St. Andrews in 1969, and was second at Baylor's first appearance in the TSSAA state meet in 1970. Anderson's career on the track was even more remarkable as he set school records in the mile in 68, 70, and 71, the 880 in 1970 and 71, and the 2 mile in 71. He was a Mid-South champion in the mile and the 880 in 1970, and was third in the mile in the TSSAA state meet the following year. At the University of Tennessee, Anderson was part of SEC outdoor championship teams in 73 and 74, competing in the 880, 1,000-yard run, the mile, the 2 mile, and the 3 mile run. 73, he set a UT record in the 1,000 and was part of a 2 mile relay team that won that won the SEC indoor championship and was runner-up in the NCAA indoor championships. 74's 2 mile relay team won the championships at the SEC indoor meet, the Penn Relays. Anderson posted his best mile time in 1975, running a 4:03, which earned him second place at the SEC Outdoor Championships. In addition to his bachelor's degree in communications he earned at UT, he holds a master's in economics from Clemson and a PhD in economics from Auburn University. He is currently a professor of economics at Frostburg State University in Maryland. He is married to Paulette Meeks, has 5 children and 1 stepdaughter. Please join me in recognizing Bill Anderson.
First, I just want to thank you, Chris Angel, for that wonderful introduction. I didn't quite recognize myself in that. But I want to say this, that without Baylor, there would have been no track career. Because not only did we have good coaches, but we had people with integrity who wanted you to win the right way, and frankly, who put up with me, because I was not easy to put up with. Let's say I'm a rather temperamental athlete. But I want to give one particular shout out, and that was to our team in 1970, the track team that went unbeaten, rolled over everybody, won the Mid-South. Some of my old teammates are here, like Ray Prince, John Prince, and we had Randy Weinberg, David Doster, Garrett Strang. I mean, there were a lot of guys, and Major Moore was very proud of that team. But more than anything else, that was the best experience, and it was a Baylor experience. It was one in which you talk about camaraderie. Like Bill would say, there is no I in team. And in fact, that was a team effort. And more than anything, I think that's what Baylor taught me, and that's what we learned. And again, thank you very much.
Our second inductee into our Sports Hall of Fame this morning is Mark Steislinger, class of '82. Mark is inducted into the Baylor Sports Hall of Fame as one of the school's 2-time TSSAA boys singles state champions. Part of a tennis-loving family as the brother of Lee, 79, and John, 81, Mark made a name for himself at Baylor early, winning the TSSAA singles title as a freshman in 1979. He finished second in the state as a sophomore before spending his junior year at the Bollettieri Tennis Academy in Florida, now known as IMG. Realizing that he needed to return to God's country and return to Baylor the following year as a senior, in 1981, he immediately went back to the top, winning a second state singles title and teaming up with Bob Williams of '83 to win the 1982 state doubles championship that spring as well. With Steislinger as the top player in the squad, Baylor won team state championships in '79 and '82 under coach Mose Payne. At SMU from '83 to '86, Steislinger racked up 81 individual victories. His Mustang squads won 3 Southwest Conference titles and played for 4 NCAA team championship finals. Steislinger was ranked among the top 20 players in the United States in 1984 and was named All-American in '84 and '85. Steislinger graduated from SMU in '87. He and his wife, Jennifer, are the parents of Mac, Claudia, Stella, and Lydia, and live in Birmingham, where Mark is an executive with a family-operated business, Alltech Incorporated. Mark is tuning in virtually this morning, so please join me in congratulating him for this induction into our Sports Hall of Fame. Our final inductee today into our Sports Hall of Fame is Tom Younger, class of '74. A 5-year letterman and team captain for 3 years, Tom Younger is inducted into our Sports Hall of Fame perhaps as one of the most valuable swimmers in the storied history of the sport at Baylor, and that's saying a lot. At the time of his graduation, he held school records in the 200 individual medley, the 100 freestyle, the 100 butterfly, the 100 backstroke, and was a member of the record-setting 200 medley and 400 freestyle relay teams. Even more impressive and important to the Baylor team is the fact that Younger graduated while holding the school record for team points scored during a season and during a career. He was the recipient of the Calfed Trophy, which is for outstanding swimmer, his junior and senior years. Part of Baylor state championship teams in 72 and 74, Younger won individual state championships in the 200 individual medley, 200 freestyle, and the 200 medley, and 400 freestyle relays. A highly versatile swimmer, Younger was a top 10 Tennessee high school performer in 7 events. Wow, 7 events, while being named honorable mention All-American in the 100 freestyle and 100 butterfly. Younger continued his swimming career for 2 years at the University of Tennessee before health problems forced him out of the pool. Those problems did not force him out of the sport, however, as he finished his UT career as a coach for the Lady Vols swim team. As a swimmer or as a staff member, he was part of SEC championships in 75, 76, and 1977. He graduated from Tennessee in 79 with a bachelor's in banking and finance. Younger and his wife Tina live in Huntsville, Alabama, where he is a senior vice president with the Smith Lanier and Company. They have 2 daughters, Ashley and Jennifer. Please join me in recognizing Tom Younger.
I'm not a big speak maker. This is extremely humbling. Never expected. Baylor taught me, as an individual, how to be part of a team. That's the best thing you walk away with. Thank you.
We will now move into recognizing our Distinguished Service Award recipient, specifically the John T. Buddy Fisher 1946 Distinguished Service Award. Today's recipient is Scott Smith, class of 1978. Scott is a successful commercial developer who has specialized in building retail projects for the past 35 years. And when he joined the Baylor Board of Trustees in 2015, he set his sights on building a culture of philanthropy at his alma mater. Smith was later appointed by the trustees as the first ever chair of a new standing committee of the board, the Development Committee, dedicated solely to the school's fundraising efforts. Under his leadership, the Baylor Fund recorded 4 consecutive record years and grew by over 50%, while the Forever Forward campaign raised over $52 million, another Baylor record. A native of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, the seeds of Smith's devotion to Baylor were sown in 1974 when he arrived on campus as a dorm student from Murfreesboro. After graduating from Baylor in 78, he attended Millsaps College and later transferred to MTSU. For the last 33 years, he has been involved in the development of over 170 projects along the Eastern Seaboard. Smith is the CEO, president of WRS Incorporated Real Estate Investments, a development company founded in 2001 to build commercial real estate projects. The company has developed over 10 million square feet of buildings since its inception. In addition to his service on Baylor's Board of Trustees, he is a former chairman of the South Carolina Housing State Finance and Development Authority, former president of the Mid-South Rugby Association, and a past advisory board member of the University Hospital of Augusta, Georgia. He also serves on the Georgia State University Real Estate Advisory Board and is a national trustee of the First Tee. Scott and his wife Kay have 3 children, the youngest of which now graduated from Baylor this spring in 2021. I'd also like to personally thank Scott for all that he's done for Peggy and me in our transition back to Baylor. Please join me in recognizing Scott Smith.
Being a developer, I like to embellish everything, and so you know, the $52 million, me having a lot to do with that, is an embellishment. That was Zan Gary, Scott Wilson, Matt Lewis, Ryan Crimmins, and Scott Probasco. Those guys are incredible, what they did for the school, and you can see it as you walk around. It's been very, very easy for me to give back to an institution that has given so much to me. And not only does it give to me, it continues to give forward to our kids and hopefully to my grandchildren and your kids and your relatives and such. So it has been a real blessing for me to be able to be part of the Baylor School. Thank you.
Our Distinguished Alumnus Award this year goes to Alan Sheptron, class of '81. A painter known for his watercolor technical ability and sensitive and thought-provoking paintings, Alan has extended his reputation from a renowned master craftsman and water gilder to a nationally acclaimed watercolorist with paintings that are collected nationally in corporate and private collections. Following graduation from Baylor, Alan earned degrees from Sewanee and from the University of Tennessee. The son of recognized painter Hubert Sheptron, 1936 to 2006, he has continued the legacy of realism that both Wyeth and his father established. Recognized by publications such as Fine American Connoisseur, Okra, American Artist Magazine, and Watercolor Artist Magazine, Sheptron garnered additional recognition when he was asked to participate in the exhibit In the Tradition of Wyeth, Contemporary Watercolor Masters at the Vero Beach Museum of Art in 2010. From 2017 to 2019, Sheptron participated in a solo exhibit that included the Morris Museum of Art, the Huntsville Museum of Art, and the Tennessee State Museum. All three fine American museums selected Alan's watercolors for their permanent collections. A solo exhibit at the Tennessee State Museum in Nashville celebrated the Celtic roots of the Appalachian Mountains. In 2019-20, Alan kicked off a literary collaboration with National Geographic's Adventure of the Year, an Appalachian Trail expert, best-selling author Jennifer Farr Davis. Davis and Sheptron's fine art coffee table book is self-published, entitled I Come From a Place. The book was awarded the Independent Publishers Award for Best Regional Nonfiction and features the collection of paintings by Sheptron and accompanying verbiage by Davis. Alan continues to create bodies of work while planning museum exhibitions, as well as providing speaking engagements and appearance at national literary and art showcases. His focus is on watercolor commissioned pieces and the research for continuation of I Come From a Place, Part 2, From the Shores of Ireland and Scotland. For his Baylor School Signature Series created for the biennial celebrations auction, Sheptron painted a series of watercolors titled The Walks of Baylor. Each painting represents an iconic scene on Baylor's campus that is familiar to all who have the honor of being a Baylor student and are titled Big Red Walk, Early Morning Walk, Crosswalk, Honor Walk, and Patriot Walk. Alan has always been a loyal Baylor supporter of his class and a class leader. He and his wife Bonnie have two sons, Jake, class of 14, and Ben, class of 16. Please join me in recognizing Distinguished Alumnus Award recipient, Alan Sheptron, class of '81.
Well, wow, what an honor. When Chris gave me the call and told me this was going to happen, I was obviously flabbergasted because I could think of 1,000 other deserving recipients of this award. So I'm extremely honored and humbled, to have this award and to be here. None of this would have happened without my Baylor experience, and I know a number of the other recipients, of whom I'm very honored to be among, have said that. But I want to thank my beautiful and supporting and loving wife, Bonnie, who has sacrificed an awful lot. Bill McMahon said earlier, how, he missed hundreds of hours with his family. And so I've missed quite a bit with my family too, but with a supporting and loving family, things can be done. I want to thank my son Ben, who's here today, and also my son Jake. They've given up a lot. And my family, my extended friends, but more importantly, my Baylor family. You guys have really supported me and throughout the years, and I can't thank you enough. Fathers always have a saying. My saying to my sons has been, do more than is expected of you. And I think Jake and Ben are pretty sick of hearing me say that. My father's favorite saying was, it takes 2 ingredients to become a successful artist. 1, you have to have some talent. That's a given. But 2, you need a little luck. And my luck has been that I've been lucky enough to have had this Baylor experience and lucky enough to have the support and love of the Baylor family. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.
As our students come up to perform for good, I just want to thank all of our recipients and their families and friends for being with us today. Again, students in the back and students up here, one thing that I kept thinking as I was listening to our recipients talk about their Baylor experience, excuse me, Bill, like you, I've been yelling a lot this week during Spirit Week, and I'm losing my voice. But it's that they're giving the credit back to Baylor. And I really think that is what we are all about. We have faculty who give every day to each other. We have students. The relationships that you're forming as students are ones that will last forever. And I can say that from experience. And that is where you need to be grateful. And so I wonder who in here or anybody in our student body will be at some point receiving an Alumnus award, an Alumna award, or who will be serving in the capacity of faculty member, staff, or just in general giving back to this wonderful institution that has given so much to all of us. So before our final song, or our next song, where we will hear about people coming into our lives for a reason, which I personally believe is very important and certainly been true in my life and our recipients today, I would like to give one final round of applause for all of our recipients.
That's people come into our lives
Thank you, Sharnima and Kara Ann. We'll now pause to remember members of the Baylor family who've passed away over the past 2 years. We'll start with a remembrance of faculty and staff. Ray Deering, Paul Dugan, John D. Harrison, class of 1984, Betty Hubbs, Alita Kenzie, Alice Little, Janice McAfee, Herbert Mitz, Ron Phillips, Velda R. Price.
Remembrance of Baylor Alumni. James H. McDowell, Jr., class of 1937.
E. Brooke Brantley, class of 1950.
Charles H. Coolidge, Sr., class of 1940.
Lawrence O. Griffin, Jr., class of 1950.
Walter R. Keenan, class of 1940.
M. Hayne Hamilton, class of 1950.
James D. Kennedy, Jr., class of 1942.
W. Leon Hardman, class of 1950.
Wally N. Henry, class of 1942.
Douglas L. Kelly, class of 1950.
Marion A. Sams, class of 1942.
M. Hayne Hamilton, class of 1950.
A. Odo Leinart, class of 1943.
L. Bernard Davis, class of 1951.
Louis B. Close, class of 1944.
Lewis C. Harris, Jr., class of 1951.
George M. Rawlings, class of 1944.
James G. Patterson, class of 1951.
Scott F. Stidham, class of 1944.
Robert Smithwick, Jr., class of 1951.
Preston R. Miller, class of 1945.
John E. Hodge, class of 1952.
Frank C. Owens, Jr., class of 1945.
Richard C. Castori, class of 1952.
Albert P. Klein, Jr., class of 1946.
J. Allen Neal, class of 1952.
Devin D. Ard, class of 1947.
Edward C. White, class of 1952.
William A. Barnes, class of 1947.
Jerome Mitchell, class of 1953.
Thomas M. Hudson, class of 1948.
William T. Healy III, class of 1954.
John R. Jackaway, class of 1948.
William M. Johnson, class of 1954.
James E. McKenzie, Jr., class of 1948.
Glower W. Jones, class of 1954.
James A. Orr, Jr., class of 1948.
Porter Warner III, class of 1954.
Edwin L. Tankalesi, Jr., class of 1948.
James M. Bauer, class of 1955.
R. Richard Ellis III, class of 1949.
J. J. Daneman, class of 1955.
Harold L. Ernest, class of 1949.
Walter Matthews, Jr., class of 1955.
Arthur R. Campshafer, class of 1949.
C. Sidney Elliott, class of 1956.
George B. Stone, class of 1949.
J. Blakeney Jackson, Jr., class of 1956.
John A. Witherspoon, Jr., class of 1949.
Thomas M. Johnson, class of 1956.
Sam M. Nickey III, class of 1956.
James Kutcher, class of 1969.
John H. Oliver, class of 1956.
Kent M. Russell, class of 1972.
Alfred E. Strasburger, class of 1956.
Theodore I. Evans III, class of 1973.
T. Carter Frierson, class of 1957.
Randall W.K. Dover, class of 1974.
N. Thomas Pilgrim Sr., class of 1957.
Timothy W. Roberts, class of 1974.
Robert M. Redhead Jr., class of 1957.
Mark Robinson, class of 1974.
J. Stanley Watson, class of 1957.
Joseph A. Tiano, class of 1974.
Charles C. Cottrell III, class of 1958.
Dunbar Abston III, class of 1975.
Sam H. Edwards, class of 1958.
Larry S. Barras, class of 1978.
Sidney N. Heltzer Jr., class of 1958.
Richard M. Tucker, class of 1978.
Andrew G. Cope, class of 1959.
George N. Ellis, class of 1979.
John M. Vansett Jr., class of 1959.
Robert H. Jennings IV, class of 1979.
L. Hale Hamilton, class of 1960.
Michael S. Schatz, class of 79.
Foster T. Hampton III, class of 1960.
Stephen F. Gelman, class of 1980.
Charles V. Martin, class of 1960.
John Devine McGee III, class of 1981.
Jan M. Evans, class of 1961.
Benjamin E. Kearney Jr., class of 1982.
Thomas H. Maybank, class of 1961.
Michael A. Rayburn, class of 1983.
Philip J. Moshe, class of 1961.
John J. Greeley IV, class of 1984.
Arnold W. Umbach Jr., class of 1961.
John D. Harrison, class of 1984.
Robert M. Bowett, class of 1962.
W. Christopher Cushman, class of 1986.
William R. Heltzer Sr., class of 1962.
Patrick W. Finley, class of 1987.
Felix G. Miller III, class of 1962.
Frank M. Robbins IV, class of 1988.
Fred T. Stapp Jr., class of 1964.
Robert G. Feltz, class of 1989.
Richard S. Dubose, class of 1965.
Kurt L. Johnson, class of 1989.
William R. Healy Jr., class of 1965.
Jonathan L. Waddy, class of 1991.
Merrill E. Johnston, class of 1965.
Carrie Fitch Hatmaker, class of 1939.
E. Culver Kidd III, class of 1965.
John A. Gary, class of 2000.
W. Reed Voigt, class of 1967.
Elizabeth H. Ferguson III, class of 2011.
James E. Thomas, class of 1968.
W. Clay Whitaker, class of 2011.
C. Edward Williams, class of 1968.
Ronan A. Cometa Suarez, class of 2020.
These 11 people, members of the class of 1970, over a period of 50 years, have all passed away. I remember the first one to pass away was the summer after we graduated. It was Steve Hedrick. It kind of shocked everybody. We hadn't even started off to college yet and already had lost a member. But the names are Steve Barris, Ernie Crane, Ernest D. Crane, we called him Ernie, Robert Cullum, Jim Eli, Philip Ferris, Stephen Hedrick, Hal Keaton, William F. Mathis, Bill Mathis, Johnny Mayfield, Bobby Pfeiffer, and Stephen Phillips.
Class of 71. Joe Bosalata, Jim Buffington, Jeff Clark, Bill Cox, Stan Jordan, Peck Lyle, Doug Odell, Charlie Roush, Rex John, Bill Thomas, and a gentleman that was only with us for 1 year, Cato Taylor, just found out that he had passed away also. Class of 71.
Beloved Baylor family and friends, we thank you for your presence for this edition of the Head of School Awards and Memorial Service. As we near the conclusion of our time together on this day, and until we gather again, may we receive this benediction from the 6th chapter of the book of Deuteronomy. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen and amen. At this time, I invite us all to stand as we join together for the singing of the Baylor Alma Mater. You can find the words on a small square card located inside your pew back. Let us stand and sing together.
Thank you.
Thank you again for being with us today. Go in peace. We look forward to seeing you at brunch.